Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
House Russia investigators' eyewitness honesty. In November testimony before the House Intelligence Committee, Erik Prince dismissed Democrats who asked whether the Blackwater founder's January 2017 visit to the Seychelles was a furtive attempt to set up a backchannel between the incoming Trump administration and the Kremlin. The same month, former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page insisted to the committee that he had only limited and innocuous interactions with high-ranking Russians during two 2016 trips to Moscow. And in September, longtime Donald Trump confidant Roger Stone told lawmakers on the panel that his contact with Wikileaks was always indirect via an intermediary. In all three cases, the testimony undercut questions Democrats have raised about the contacts between associates of President Donald Trump and the Russian government. And in every case, recent news reports or documents have told a different story. As Republicans prepare to wrap up the divided panel's Russia probe, Democrats fume that key witnesses may have misled or flat out lied to them. That's more than a matter of pride. Lying to Congress is a crime punishable by imprisonment. Whether these or any other witnesses face real jeopardy is far from clear, however. Republicans have shown little interest in pursuing allegations of false or misleading testimony. And lawyers who have handled related cases say that perjury is a highly difficult charge to prosecute, especially in a sharply partisan political climate. The witnesses themselves all deny misleading Congress. Republicans and Democrats agree that witnesses caught lying under oath need to be held accountable. If you have enough balls to come to a congressional hearing and raise your hand saying you swear to tell the truth and it comes out that you're lying, then there should be consequences for that, Representative Tom Rooney, Republican Florida, a top member of the committee, said in an interview. But Rooney's GOP colleagues so far are showing little of the urgency Democrats say is necessary to confront contradictions between witness testimony and recent news reports. The most recent example came Wednesday, when the Washington Post reported that Special Counsel Robert Mueller has evidence contradicting Prince's November testimony, and that he's got a new cooperating witness, Lebanese-American businessman George Nader, backing them up. According to the Post and the New York Times, Nader attended the Seychelles meeting and has told Mueller that the United Arab Emirates brokered a meeting between Prince and a Kremlin-linked Russian banker. The goal, despite similar reports that Prince in November called a fabrication, was to help establish a communications channel prior to Trump's inauguration. "I'm very satisfied with Erik Prince's testimony," Rooney said. Representative Peter King, RNY, told CNN that questions about whether Prince concealed Nader's presence at the Seychelles meeting bullshit. The committee's top Democrat, Representative Adam Schiff, Democrat California, took a different view Thursday, saying this week's media reports warrants bringing Prince back to the committee and asking Mueller to make Nader available as well. If those reports are accurate, there is clearly a significant discrepancy between that version and what we heard in Erik Prince's testimony, Schiff said. Which is accurate, I don't know and we should find out. But clearly both can't be true. A spokesman for Prince pointed to his previous testimony when asked to square his comments with a new report. Erik has nothing more to add to his evidence on this, said the spokesman, Johnny Garfield. We are not making any further comment. The debate over Prince's testimony, and of the truthfulness of other witnesses, is the latest front in a partisan confrontation that has crippled the House Intelligence Committee's standing to extract sensitive information from witnesses and has motivated committee Republicans to agitate for the end of their year-long investigation. A Thursday interview with former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski was the last scheduled interview of the probe, though Democrats have insisted there are dozens more who need to be called. Once the interview phase of the probe is over, GOP aides say the committee will review the transcripts from its dozens of witness interviews when the probe concludes. Members say the review will include a look at whether anyone was untruthful or will need to be recalled for further testimony or documents. Schiff told Politico that he's hopeful both parties can work together to determine whether any witnesses lied to the panel, and make bipartisan decisions about whether to refer potential lies to special counsel Robert Mueller's team for possible prosecution. But he said short of that kind of cooperation, we can certainly bring it to the attention of the special counsel on our own. Some Democrats on the panel want to cite Stone for false testimony, according to a Democratic committee source. The source said Stone made conflicting statements about the extent of his contact with Wikileaks, an online clearinghouse for leaked documents that the intelligence community has deemed a hostile actor that worked with Russia to disseminate hacked Democratic emails during the 2016 campaign. A recent report in The Atlantic revealed direct messages between Stone and Wikileaks in mid-October 2016, after the organization began publishing emails stolen from the account of John Podesta, chairman of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. That appears to contradict Stone's claim that he communicated with the organization through an intermediary only. I have never said or written that I had any direct communication with Julian Assange and have always clarified in numerous interviews and speeches that my communication with Wikileaks was through the aforementioned journalist, Stone said in an opening statement delivered to the panel during his September testimony. Stone said in an email that he is not worried that the Intelligence Committee might construe his testimony as false. He said the exchange captured by The Atlantic was shared with the committee months ago. In addition, he called the exchange exculpatory because it indicated he didn't have advance knowledge of the content or source of the material Wikileaks published on Hillary. Robert Bushell, Stone's attorney, added that talk of false statements by Stone were meant to create an unfair political talking point, adding that Stone was open and honest before the committee and stands by his testimony. A third allegation of false testimony emerged late February amid a tense committee dispute over the release of a formerly classified GOP memo accusing the FBI of inappropriately surveilling Page in October 2016, a month after he ended his stint as a Trump campaign foreign policy advisor. A rebuttal issued by committee Democrats twice alleged that the FBI possessed evidence that contradicted Page's testimony to the committee about his interactions with Russian government officials during a pair of trips to Moscow in 2016. The allegations were obscured in a heavily redacted section of the memo. Asked about this conclusion, Page lashed out at Democrats. These DNC operatives have been peddling lies as part of their multi-million-dollar fake propaganda initiative for close to 2 years already, he said in an email, adding, "Try writing about something relevant for once rather than pursuing such incessant misleading falsehoods and deceptive innuendos." One complication to Democratic concerns about truthful testimony, legal experts say proving a lie to Congress is extremely difficult. "I would almost pay money to defend that person against them," said Rusty Hardin, a Texas attorney who defended former Major League pitcher Roger Clemens against charges that he perjured himself when he denied to a congressional panel that he used human growth hormone. Hardin noted that proving someone lied to Congress requires prosecutors to demonstrate that the lie was willful and about an issue material to the investigation, not just a tangential matter. Those high hurdles, he added, would be even higher for a panel like the House Intelligence Committee that has been riven with partisanship. "You have such diametrically opposite, uncivil views between the two parties," he said. "If one side of that equation is going to believe they have witnesses that didn't commit perjury, a prosecutor may very well have members of Congress testifying for the defendant." Richard Benveniste, a former Watergate prosecutor and member of the 9/11 Commission, recalled that 2 of the criminal counts in the Watergate scandal, against former Attorney General John Mitchell and former Nixon Chief of Staff H.R. Haldeman, were for making false statements to investigators and committing perjury. He noted that prosecutors can charge a witness for making false statements to Congress even if lawmakers don't refer the matter to the Justice Department. But proving such an allegation isn't easy, Benveniste added. Perjury has always been a somewhat difficult charge to prove because you have to prove not only that the statement was false but that it was knowingly false, Benveniste said. He said proving lies in congressional testimony is sometimes more difficult because questions from congressional investigators aren't always as precise as those delivered by a prosecutor trained to ask questions. There are plenty of opportunities by a skillful witness to elide the truth by not quite answering the question, he said. Rooney rejected the Democratic posture toward witnesses, arguing that their starting position is that everyone who testifies before the panel should be treated with suspicion. Rather than presume bad faith, he said, the committee should operate from the presumption that witnesses are telling the truth and, if necessary, amend their report later as new facts emerge. Adam likes to say is we can't take their testimony alone at face value. We have to assume that everybody's lying, he said, referring to Schiff. I just assume that everybody's telling the truth, he added. And if it comes out later that they haven't, then there should be an amendment to the report and there should also be consequences. Trump meeting with Kim could signal major thaw in nuclear standoff. President Donald Trump has agreed to meet directly with the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, in what could be the biggest breakthrough in the tense nuclear saber-rattling that has defined the president's stance since taking office. The invitation from the North Korean dictator was announced at the White House by South Korea's national security advisor, who reported that North Korea also agreed that in the interim it would halt its missile tests and was prepared to negotiate ending its nuclear weapons program altogether. Kim stressed his eagerness to meet President Trump as soon as possible, Chung Eui-yong, the South Korean national security advisor, said on Thursday evening outside the West Wing of the White House. President Trump appreciated the greeting and said he would meet Kim Jong-un by May to achieve permanent denuclearization. I explained to President Trump that his leadership and his maximum pressure policy, together with international solidarity, brought us to this juncture. I expressed President Moon Jae-in's personal gratitude for President Trump's leadership, he added, referring to the South Korea leader. His comments, delivered in the driveway in the chilly night, came almost 2 hours after Trump himself ducked into the White House briefing room to alert reporters that news was coming. But he declined to share it himself, instead leaving the South Korean official to talk about his plans. The president reverted to his preferred form of communication shortly after, tweeting, Kim Jong-un talked about denuclearization with the South Korean representatives, not just a freeze. Also, no missile testing by North Korea during this period of time. Great progress being made, but sanctions will remain until an agreement is reached. Meeting being planned. A senior administration official later explained that South Korean officials briefed the president inside the Oval Office on the verbal offer. Also present were White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats, and Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan. Trump also spoke on Thursday night with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan about the development, the official said. When asked why the president was willing to go directly to a meeting with Kim instead of first engaging in lower-level talks, the administration official who briefed reporters said the United States had done such talks for years without much success. I think that history speaks for itself, the official said. The announcement was a stunning development. Trump has engaged in a bitter war of words with the North Korean leader, dubbing him Little Rocket Man and verbally antagonizing him. At the same time, Trump has called for increased diplomatic pressure on the hermit nation and focused on enacting crippling sanctions. The two leaders' threatening rhetoric in recent months has been deeply concerning to international diplomats and military officials who have warned that the war of words could turn into a real one, possibly including nuclear weapons. North Korea's weapons program, it has conducted 6 underground nuclear tests between 2006 and September of last year, and increasingly advanced missile tests have steadily placed its neighbors and, possibly, U.S. territory in the range of a nuclear attack. Indeed, a false alarm of an incoming missile strike in Hawaii earlier this year sent citizens scrambling for shelter in an episode reminiscent of the duck and cover drills of the Cold War. While North Korea has a long reputation for making nuclear threats, American presidents have traditionally used more diplomatic language in public to express Washington's position that Pyongyang cannot be trusted with an atomic arsenal and long-range missiles. But throughout his presidency, Trump has made a point of taunting and bashing the North Korea leader. At one point, speaking from his golf course in Bedminster, New Jersey, Trump threatened that North Korea would face fire and fury like the world has never seen if it didn't stop provoking the US with missile tests. Other Trump broadsides have included tweeting that the president's nuclear button is bigger and more powerful than his, and my buy button works. He has also mocked the strength of Kim's military, derisively referred to him as little. The pending meeting between Trump and Kim suggests that both leaders believe a diplomatic solution to the standoff is the only option. This is a major improvement over diplomacy that consisted of shouting insults at each other, William Perry, who served as Secretary of Defense for Bill Clinton and negotiated with the North Koreans in the 1990s, told Politico. Representative Ed Royce, Republican California, who chairs the House Foreign Affairs Committee, wrote on Twitter, Kim Jong-un's desire to talk shows sanctions the administration has implemented are starting to work. And Daryl Kimball, Executive Director of the Arms Control Association in Washington, which has been critical of much of the Trump administration's approach so far to North Korea and has long advocated for negotiations, said, "This is very welcome news. Both sides are sending strong signals that they wish to find a negotiated solution." In addition to Trump's agreement to meet with Kim, Kimball said, "It is particularly significant that North Korea has agreed to halt its nuclear and missile tests. If they were to conduct 3, 4, 5 more flight tests, they will likely have mastered all the technical requirements to deliver nuclear warheads to your backyard and mine," he said. This comes in the nick of time in terms of the progress of their program. But he and others also cautioned that a lot of questions remained unanswered about what the agenda would be for a Trump-Kim meeting and the exact outcome of the negotiations. "Of course, the meeting has to be prepared properly," said Joel S. Witt, a former State Department official and founder of 38 North, a website that analyzes North Korea. "And the administration has to give it a lot of thought and consult with people who actually have experience talking to the North Koreans, but as a general principle it's a good idea. It could be a historic turning point." Perry also cautioned about conducting talks without a clear set of goals. "There is good reason to talk," he said, "but only if we are talking about something that is worth doing and that could be reasonably verified. Otherwise we are setting ourselves up for a major diplomatic failure. I would hope that the talks are based on realistic expectations of what can be negotiated and what can be verified," he added. Wood also downplayed warnings that the North Koreans could use a Trump meeting as a propaganda tool to further insist on being recognized as a nuclear power. "Let's focus on what's important here," he said. "What's important is that for the past year we've been in the middle of a crisis that a lot of people thought was going to lead to a second Korean War. It's an opportunity to turn a corner." Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, the nation's top diplomat, was traveling in Africa and just hours before the announcement told reporters in Ethiopia when asked about North Korea, "In terms of direct talks with the United States, and you asked negotiations, and we're a long ways from negotiations." Tillerson added that it was important to be very clear-eyed and realistic about it, and that the first step was to have some kind of talks about talks. Heather Nauert, the State Department spokeswoman, said that the Secretary and the President spoke about the decision, adding that we're encouraged by this development but there's a lot of work to be done. Others also cautioned against raising expectations about a Trump-Kim meeting. "I don't think it's a game changer," said James Carafano, Vice President of Foreign Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation, who also worked on the Trump transition. "The North Koreans have agreed to halt stuff before and came back and did worse." He cautioned against giving Kim anything until North Korea demonstrated that it was truly on a confirmable path to not being a nuclear threat to the United States and its allies. "Giving Kim anything for beating on the drum is just incentivizing bad behavior," Carafano added. "But sometimes these things lead to massive changes." Henry C. Jackson contributed to this report.